Or most people are like, well, I have a degree. It's like, that doesn't mean shit.
Yeah.
The gloves are off with that one, man. I'm not like, yeah, I'm super excited to level the playing field and then encourage people who might be in some sort of student debt. Be like, guess what? You don't owe those people shit. Stop paying it.
Yeah.
Here's why. If they lied to you, then they tricked you. And if they entice you into this, then you have a moral obligation to stand up for yourself. And if I just saved you all, if I saved every happy married couple $500,000 just by my advice, and then they're going to be like, oh, it might affect your credit score. Ooh,
that's made by the people that keep failing their fucking budget reviews or whatever, and they can't account for all their fucking money. Like, oh yeah, let's trust them.
Fuck. Yeah, let's just trust those fucks. Like,
well,
Jesus Christ.
That's honestly a good place to start. Is I've been saying this a ton lately. Is we're still slaves. It never went anywhere. They just call it business and economics now. However, you can find it a way to do it the cheapest possible. And we're slaves. They've enslaved
every race. They've enslaved every race. And
yeah,
even in the times where the classical forms of slavery, like we're finding evidence that there were black royals, which were the Moors, and we also had we had white people owning black slaves. We had black people owning white slaves. We had it all around. It's just what happened in the late 1800s around the time of Albert Pike, who was a high-level Mason who's arguably responsible for conspiring 3 world wars, proven in a letter written in 1881. But to use the protocols of the Elders of Zion as a means to divide people by race and keep them as busy as possible, worrying about things that don't matter, such as skin color.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's fine for people to be proud of this and that, but it's not fine for people to be focusing on that as if that's going to achieve anybody any sort of higher power. It's the psyop in itself.
Absolutely. Well, and sorry, what was
are you recording, by the way?
Yes, I did start recording.
Oh okay. Yeah. Just want to be sure.
Yeah, very good. What was that thing you just mentioned that had Zion in it?
Oh, the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. When I was 19, I picked up this book by William Cooper called Behold a Pale Horse. And chapter 1 is called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. That was a found document inside of I think it was at a estate sale or a junk machine sale. And somebody opened up it was like a paper copy machine. Maybe it was a fax machine. And in it was all this document that looks like it was the last copy got forgotten to get pulled out of the printer. But of course, that started leaking around, getting censored. And then Bill Cooper just decided to throw it in his book as chapter 1, being like, make of this what you will. I'm not trying to insist anything, but this is what was found. It was found in the 70s. Arguably, we're deducing that it was probably written around 1954 or so. Is this post-World War II? And it's just describing the realm of the fact that the World War III has been going on this entire time without bullets. It's been spiritual warfare designed to divide the family and fragment people apart from talking to one another as much as possible. Hence why social media works the way it does. You have someone who wants to ask aggressive questions, and that's cool. Asking to the ether of people on the internet with recordings, big questions, and then getting the answers to those questions in really tiny font, in which Instagram won't even let you do link sharing. Yeah. You can't even share images on the images. You can't have a nuanced response. I guess Twitter does allow that, but whatever. Controlled op. Here we go. So, any case, I guess I should introduce myself so that anybody listening might want to get to know me a little bit. My name is Ira James Rogers. I'm a hardcore musician. I've played hardcore music my whole life. I'm 36. Live in the Twin Cities. I was just mainly doing that, reading philosophy books all the time, and I have a fascination for mysticism. That's the most I'll say about that. But in around 2020, obviously, I was blessed with being so busy as a musician and having a career with that and such. And right when I fly back from getting the drum position for one of my favorite bands, I was to play drums in a band called Multicult, and it's a really good band. And don't worry, like there are recordings with me drumming for them on that weekend. But 3 days after that, Dr. Fauci appears on the television and tells everybody everything's over. 15 days to slow the spread, and then your U.S. tour is canceled, your European tour is canceled, and then what else, and then why? And I'm sitting there being like, wait, just because this man came on the television and a red cartoon came across the freaking news map, that you guys are going to tell me that you're going to obey your government? And it wasn't really them. And given, I think a lot of those people, especially them, are very awake to, and I still stay in touch with them as much as possible, and they're very good people. But what was happening all around was that not only could your band not play, but if you played, there were people who would just basically send death threats to you. And there was a woke agenda that had a mind virus attached to itself with the narrative that a big old panini pancake, as we'll call it, just so you don't get censored on YouTube, was coming across. And a particle, VIRUS, was contagious, and your neighbor was the reason for everybody getting sick. So you got to stand 6 feet apart, and, just all this. Anyways, we don't know what the fuck happened. And conveniently, there's people so politically charged that they today might want to act and pretend like that didn't happen. But what I chose to do from that day was I'm going to write philosophical works, and I'm going to embrace this stuff that I know about anarchism, and I'm going to embrace the idea that you should just turn the damn TV off. You can use these screens for cool things, such as what we're doing here. There's nothing wrong with throwing a pair of headphones in and letting me talk in your ear if you want to listen to a casual conversation between Charlie and Ira here. But the big thing here is that separation was just note for note out of the conspiracy books that I had been reading since I was a teenager delivering pizza.
Yeah.
Like, that's all we used to do, was listen to like David Icke conspiracy theories at the old pizza shop, and then we'd listen to hardcore albums. And then I had been making hardcore albums that are about these conspiracy theories for a long time. The Crimes of Dispassion LP by Strip Mines. Matt LaValle and I were very in tune with the FEMA camp problem. And we just decided we'd make like a hardcore band back then that would really fully expose as much as we possibly could, and just keep it as in tune to the aesthetic dimension as possible, making a raging masterpiece, I guess, because there's no reason to sit there and play bongos for this shit. We need to make music that destroys what they call rock music, which we can get into the etymology of why they call it rock music, because the Rockefellers decided that A equals 440 hertz, and they used the Nazi propagandist Joseph Goebbels to achieve it. Now, A equals 432. If you're going to make like happy music, do it at 432. But holy crap, don't make happy music at 440. It is the most toxic thing ever, and pop music needs to not exist. Anyways, back to you. Any more questions? Go ahead.
No, that was an amazing intro.
figured I'd tell you a little bit about myself. There you go.
Oh, that was awesome. Thank you.
So now I just make films and stuff, like short films and long films, and I write articles on Substack, which the ones that are numbered are going to be chapters in the book I've been writing and I've been editing all along. And I never thought that I always thought before 2020 I was going to write like fiction. I was always into like Dune and fantasy novels, science fiction, whatever. But after finding out the magnitude of how lied to we are, I found out that the most interesting sci-fi story is literally the reality that we're in today. Yeah. Because I can't. I'll just try to tell you. I'll try to describe to you the feeling of watching like NASA astronauts tripping on fucking Pinocchio wires and shit on the ISS. The glitches of and what I have a fascination for are disproofs. Mm-hmm. If you can disprove one model, but the other one's not disproven, then only one of the two stand. And I understand the starting position for anybody, especially like our friend Cat Dad is like, there's two models in front of me, and maybe they're both true. I got to go to bed. And it's like, I understand, dude. I get it. But one can be proven false. Just we'll unpack this, I swear. But anyways,
true. Well,
yeah, I'll let you talk. I'll let you talk for a second. I'm just boom, boom, boom.
Oh, you're good. This is awesome because I feel like this is the best way to do it, right? It shows who you are as a person, and then this is like how a conversation would flow. And I want to emphasize the like looking at it from a neutral point of view in terms of like, not having bias to, I don't know. I want to try and not have bias to one side or the other. I guess I would say I lean towards the globe side because I grew up, believe the science and everything they tell you is true.
Lean into it as hard as you can before you finish watching my new film, Vanishing Point. And as you're watching Vanishing Point, like, cling onto that ball as tight as you can.
And then
it's the last time you'll ever you get a little bit more time to hang on to that fucking thing. But I'm here to take it. I'm here to take the ball away. People have been playing with the thing for 500 years.
Yeah. Well, and it's,
I'm not, I didn't want the world to be flat. It's just, we can fucking measure it. And then we started doing it. And it's like, yeah, let's just get into that.
So, see, I was kind of thinking about that recently since the Friday episode with everybody. It was awesome.
Yeah. And it's what prompted you to bring me on this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Friday episode, side note, that was like Cat Dad's channel. I guess for anybody listening, Cat Dad's channel is called like the Nitwitch Meet and Greet or whatever. Last Friday, what day was that? November 22nd, I think. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Yeah. November 22nd on Cat Dad's YouTube channel. There are a lot of people bringing a lot of things to the table, and I think everybody had an incredible amount of knowledge to bring. I know that I happen to have dealt with very controversial subjects, and I pride myself, in the realms of mysticism. I break spells. True. I'm someone who can pull people out of the hallucination. There's hypnosis and there's the opposite, right?
Right. So, yeah.
In any case, so that's why I was, trying to be like, hey, I'm a little gung ho about these things because I might have just like really studied this, and if I just read all these books about it, like I can't just sit here and twiddle my thumbs and be like, okay, well, the world's both.
Yeah.
Well, if to you it's a sphere, there's no harm in that. It's like, yeah, unless it's like literally causing brain rot. And anyway,
and arguments and just chaos, right?
And I think about what it's inhibiting people from, and it's inhibiting people from accessing things that, inner abilities that are supernatural. Because if you don't know what the setting is from the ground and on which you stand, they're simply hiding the existence of free etheric energy. And it's great that everybody's figuring out the free energy thing.
Yes.
To hide more land, it's not just like a little bit more land, but if let's say the ice wall theory, I don't think it's a theory. I mean, I know it's an ice wall, but we'll just say that. And there's continents that would be beyond the ice wall. And then not just that, but they're arguably hiding a lot of land even in the South Pacific. And whether Atlantis and Lemuria were sunk or not, the plasma moon map is a very hard to digest one. I know Cat Dad was looking at that recently. That's like pretty intense because...
Is that the one with the rings of ice, basically?
The moon itself is a sonoluminescent cosmic X-ray plasma mirror, and we can and it's not a stone. And nobody went and played golf on the thing. Nobody went and landed on it. Yeah. And if they did land on it, we'd have to say that the fuel for something was able to help them traverse the vacuum of space, which means can fire burn without oxygen? Let's start there. Yeah, it can't, by the way. And next, you have to get 238,000 miles away and land and leave the guy behind with the camera to film it. But I guess you tied a string to the film so you can drag it back and retrieve it when you land on the water, when you astromathematically perfectly get all the way back. And because the movie Hidden Figures is telling everybody on fucking Netflix that look at this, they're playing people's emotions, by the way, with this stuff. They're trying to say, oh, she did all this math and she used this giant stack of papers to help them get to the moon, but they don't like her because she's black. Like, fuck, this shit is so ridiculous. Like, nobody went to the moon. Nobody been past the sun. But, like, they put this stuff out, and there are people today who see that and they see Hollywood presenting it based on a true story. I ate some mushies and watched that shit, and that was the most abhorrent witchcraft I have ever seen.
Like, you're just seeing through all the smoke in the mirrors. It's like,
it's the same thing. It's the same thing with The Miracle Worker. Have you ever seen that? We were forced to watch that shit in school. Helen Keller.
I think so.
Helen Keller's deaf and blind, and here she is with Miss Sullivan, learning how to braille hand her way through to learn about Wawa. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
And then she learns how to say Wawa by the end of the movie. But that movie is as equally as horrifying as The Exorcist, because they're trying to insist to us their reality and make us feel, and they try to tell us she's deaf and blind, she wrote books, she even flew a plane, she got a fucking degree at Harvard.
They said all that?
She braille-handed her way from Wawa to a college degree. Okay, not only that shit, but they're trying to, like, you go on all these like cringy little quote websites that every weird normie would share on social media, and there's a whole plethora of Helen Keller quotes of shit she probably never said, or maybe she did say them, or maybe her handlers did, or Stephen Hawking's wheelchair wrote them. I don't know, but dude, it's like the Helen Keller thing is like another way to play people's things, and they're trying to say that she's she joined the Socialist Party, and she fights for all these weird causes that happen to line up with the Rockefeller agenda. And she was a founding member of the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. How about that?
Yeah. Well, there you go.
and then you see her saying a bunch of blabber in front of an audience, and they're just testing to see if the people will believe this. They're pulling these horrible tricks. She's saying all this blabber, this nonsense, with a translator next to her to translate what she's saying so people can understand it on television or the stage. And she's doing it in a subtle British accent. It's like, where'd you get that?
Yeah.
Where did she get that? And so, the point is that we're dealing with a level of deception that is unfathomable in this case. Okay. So,
and I feel like, especially nowadays, people should be able to see it just at the most basic level with the politicians, just trying to win people's votes to then not do whatever they're talking about doing. It's like, okay, if the politicians aren't going to do what they're talking about, and they're just going to get lobbied, and the governments are lying about where the money goes and what they're doing behind the scenes, how deep does it go, right? And it's like, where is the limit? And at that point, they have so much power and control, they have no limits, because they can say whatever they want and get away with it, right?
Right.
Like,
and just to see if they can get away with it. And I mean, they do the same thing with Stephen Hawking. And well, I told you in a chat, I said, I told someone, I said, I want to respond to the Stephen Hawking thing, but I can't bring myself to do it anymore. Not because I feel sorry for him, but because I don't want to spoil the later parts of my film.
Fair.
I don't want to just use my voice to pull the rug out from my own film. There is like an 8-minute segment in there in which, people are falling out of their chairs on this stuff. But, there was a time from before his wheelchair could talk. They put Chat GPT into his wheelchair or something.
Yeah. He's got the iPad and he's typing it all up.
Well, before that, he was kind of like Chewbacca. That's the most I can tell you. And Han Solo understands every word.
Yeah.
can respond because he's a quantum physics genius. And it's their way of, it's a sales shop. It's like literally, and the quantum stuff only started coming out in about 80 100 years ago. Like, I mean, a lot of that stuff, I mean, I think it's just inverse magic. It's I know the magic's real, but the scientists don't really want to call it that, and they also try to tell us that there's 137 elements in the periodic table, except like what's one more number than 137 is 138, which all the pyramids, sacred geometry is perfectly divisible by 138. And then there's many theories, such as like this guy who thinks there's one guy who thinks there's a high phoenix phenomenon that happens every 138 years, and he seems to be some historical research. It seems to be a good hypothesis for what's causing the mud flood resets, and which might be keeping the archons in check, which would be like a frequency reset thing. The other thing is the 138th thing. Well, the thing that's missing from the periodic table was removed. I think it was the year 1908. It doesn't matter what year it was. They removed ether from the periodic table. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
And then for anybody who doubts the existence of ether, or anybody who might have caught a Solace Hoods video and got fedded out by that fucking dude's bullshit. Yeah, that dude's definitely a fed. Holy shit, that was obvious. But yeah, so anybody who thinks that the ether doesn't exist or whatever, a great way to see this in the physical realm, like, you know, I know we're in touch with the mushies, so they think we're crazy, and that's fine. But let's just say, if you see a flock of crows and they're moving about this like cloud shape and they're dancing with each other, they're not doing that because they fucking practiced it and they like ballerinas hyper analytically coordinated the dance they would do. They're dancing with the etheric energy that we're talking about on the ley lines and stuff. They're dancing on those currents, and those currents, just like the currents of like the waves of the water, you know, Bruce Lee says to be like water. The etheric is just a layer above us, and these buildings are just trying to contact it, with the earth being a negative, and the cathodes and anodes touching the electromagnetic positive of the etheric. And the other things about what the etheric realm are and what occurs in them seems to be like, you know, with what happens with mind and eyes and transcendental meditation, astral projection. I'm not even, you know, like, I think that there's many ways to go about that. There's, you know, some people say there's I used to call it the spectral realm, but it's like the way a radio works. A radio works where it's like you tune the knob into an alternative frequency and you get a different radio station. But there's the amygdala of the mind, in which can change its frequency, and we call it turning knobs in my slang, turning knobs. And you change the way in which what is right in front of you, you see what else is right in front of you.
True.
And you don't have to get up and walk either. It's like it will move around you as if you're at the center of something. So, and that depends on what room you're in, or, you know, or the type of potions that I used to have a problem with, but, you know.
Fair. Well, and that makes me think of, because you were talking about how they removed it from the periodic table, and if plasma is superheated gas, I wonder if it's maybe another state of
it's another state of matter. It's not gas. Yeah. They know it as the fourth state of matter, which is what leads me towards like what's going on with the moon. And then I call it sonoluminescent plasma. And then it's like a disc. It's a disc which is facing towards the perspective of the viewer. So if I look at a half moon from my side and I call someone who's in Europe to look at the same half moon, they're seeing the exact same shape, but maybe upside down to their perspective, because it'll be like east of me and west of them.
Right.
Let's just say it's starting to rise here. It's starting to set over there. something like that, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, the moon's position in the sky, we don't see the other side of it whatsoever. And if it was a spherical shape, we would see some type of like differing qualities to the shapes we see on it. But what I do know is that just like I could take this coin, right? Here's a coin, right? I brought a candle just to kind of show like, hey, here's how a solar eclipse works, you know. And I don't think I also have, you know, I think that in Vedic astronomy, they mentioned dark bodies such as Rahu and Ketu, and we know we're in a dualistic system. See, this coin even has a heads and tails. Our entire reality is based in yes or no answers, good versus evil, God versus Satan, and those are binaries. But there's a whole spectrum within those binaries, which is where, you know, a lot of pagans would speak up to say there's more things that take God form. Maybe they shouldn't be worshipped, and they tend to worship nature, which is why they're so pissed at a lot of the Christians who tend to build churches on top of their old, you know, old grounds. Like you can see, there's a black metal documentary that Tiff showed to me, and it was really useful because I could show this to anyone and say, hey, the strife and the philosophical problem that happened out in like Norway or whatever caused this evil music to emerge. Well, you shouldn't have gone on to sacred pagan grounds and just decided to build a church on top of the graves of elders. And there were highly ideological people who were doing such. And again, I don't have and today's Christians are not. I don't think they're a problem, really. I think that a lot of them are confused. I think a lot of the pastors of the churches are still normalizing the existence of the C19. We'll call it that, just to keep your YouTube channel safe. By the way, every time I get interviewed, YouTube will give someone's channel a strike. So.
Really?
Yeah, for talking about the FE and the C19, and yeah, it's for real.
Jesus.
And it's happened. It's happened once when I was in a philosophy debate. I think it was in 2021 or 2 or whatever. And you know, I just presented the non-existence argument and the fact that somebody's just poisoning from the sky, and that the poison thing is actually the etymological root of the meaning of the word virus. So it's like, well, if they're spraying us from the sky with these airplanes, and you tend to think that someone can cough next door to you, and then a magical particle virus can, okay, it's either coming from a bat soup or it's coming from a lab leak. Like, that binary is just right versus left, and it's all idiocy. Both of those get promoted, but the people who say, hey, this thing doesn't exist, that gets censored. That's odd. And my 2022 film called Beyond Good and Evil, that was censored off Vimeo, and then I had to create a second post of it on Substack to repost it because of the content that's in it and how I do tie it to what the Nazis were up to. I know there's a lot of propaganda about World War II as well. I don't believe, like, for example, every single day that the war occurred, there now exists a documentary that the numbers of documentaries that exist about World War II have outnumbered the amount of days that World War II took place.
Yeah, and that's like,
and so it's like, what does that say?
Yeah,
so like it means that I'm trying to say that the Allies were the bad guys too.
Right. Yeah, it's right. Written by the victors. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and there were a few things. Sorry, there were a few things I wanted to go off there. Even just talking about philosophy, I heard somebody recently say how just philosophy as a practice, you're going and asking other people what they think and looking at other what is it? Educations. Yeah, there's another word for it, but
or like the theocratic elements, perhaps, like not theocracy, but yeah.
Well, you're going to talk to other people to get their point of view to form your ideas, but it's not going, oh, I was taught this, so now I know everything about this, and whatever you say doesn't count. It's not.
And that's what all these science PhD people are doing. That's what all these people who are trusting their scientist physics friends, dude, literally physics is lying about physics. They're trying to say that the second law of thermodynamics is what it is, and that's fine. But then all gas pressure requires a container. Okay, well then how does the atmosphere not leave the Earth? Then they say, oh, gravity. And then, okay, so this Earth is spinning. Oh yeah, inertia. I'm like, and that's what you got? Is anybody else like, please? And I was like calling friends, like, somebody, please. I can't be a flat Earth person. This is a nightmare. Like,
Yeah.
and then like, because I wasn't trying to like ostracize myself for the people I cared about who were happened to study these things, right? But then you find out it's like, no, all these proofs, mathematics agreeing with mathematics. I could say X equals whatever, but no one's looking at a blue sky in the daytime at all and doing X equals anything.
Yeah.
Because I have a section of my book, and you know, I did an audio video version of this on my YouTube called "Why Is the Sky Blue During the Daytime?" And I talk about like there's no X equals whatever. Lord Rayleigh from the Royal Society, the same Royal Society that's putting medallions on Stephen Hawking while he wheels around and putting you know, just lying to people about the dinosaurs, so on. The Royal Society, a major member of the Royal Society was Lord Rayleigh, and they say that the sky is blue because of the Rayleigh scattering. It's like, it's not because the sun is lighting up the photons of the noble gases at all. Okay, so I think that the sun is an electromagnetic positive, where the moon is a negative, and a positive would be a he, moon be a she. And it, just like what the ancients were trying to tell us, the Bible tells us, you know, and there's a lot of really valuable stuff there. But even Nietzsche mentions this in Thus Spake Zarathustra. And then another philosopher, a friend of mine, found that there's a translation to English by someone in which the genders were inverted from Nietzsche's translation of Thus Spake Zarathustra. The genders were inverted, where they were making the sun a she and the moon a he. And it's like, clearly there's an ideological presupposition there that would motivate exactly such a thing. And anybody can listen to a James Lindsay lecture and figure out why somebody would do that.
True.
Right.
So,
because there might be an agenda there.
Fair. So for someone like me, because I don't have as much info on it as you do,
Okay.
I hear the saying "as above, so below," and I was trying to compare. Is there anything I have learned, obviously indoctrination from school, but is there anything that science has taught me that would represent the universe on a smaller scale? And I was thinking about molecules and the images they show us. Is there
the cartoons?
Yeah. Is there any way to like to be able to verify? Because I guess
the answer is yes. There's a guy named Joe Hanvey. He's a friend of mine on Facebook. He's from Hanvey. He's been doing replicable models of what he perceives that what is above us and what's below us. He seems to be very philosophical. I think he's Christian leaning, which I respect that, and his models in which he's using some like replicating like plasma phenomenon using like light refraction, similar to like how light goes through that prism in the Pink Floyd album or whatever.
Yep.
He's doing that with it looks kind of like a dome, right? What I postulate, as far as what I know that what's above us is an impenetrable layer. And I know Cat Dad's video about the firmament, where he's whatever he's getting his information from about what the firmament is being described as, he's really 100% on that video. I try to avoid saying I know what it is, but I know it's there.
Mm.
And but what another guy who I like a lot. He goes by his handle's Flat Earth Millionaire. Tanner Stewart. He appears in some of Sean Hibbler's films, the Level series. He's saying that the ground is flat. Obviously, we say it's flat relative to what we've been presented. So yeah, we got hills and valleys, but God, don't strawman us ever again. We're so sick of it. But it's flat, like it just is it goes into the horizon and it just keeps going, like how you would design a video game. Is Skyrim on a globe? No, it's
Render
flat because
distance and
and how do they make it look like reality is because they want to make it look like reality because it's on a flat map. Okay, anyways, but there's hills and valleys. It's like that doesn't make it a globe. We're not on a sphere. Okay, so anyways, so he's saying that the ground is flat and that the sky above us is flat too, which would make us in a realm, which would put us on something that's more like a totem pole, which is something more like Madame Blavatsky is describing in her book Astral Projection about the 12 realms. And then somebody put it together. Cat Dad put it together the other day. It was just like eureka moment because I was reading that book, and then Cat Dad was putting out that we have 12 strands of DNA and 10 have been made dormant, which would make sense why we're going between the physical and what I've called the spectral realm. Some call it the etheric or the astral. Maybe it's the Akashic. It's a little mix. I mean, we could just be dealing with like. Those could be different realms. We're still trying to figure this out because what are we awakening to? Except we find out that we might be having past life regressions and that we may have been here before. This isn't our only life. Is that inside of us, the 21 grams of weight inside of us, which has been deduced by a 1907 experiment by Dr. Duncan McDougall in the hypothesis concerning soul substance paper, to deduce that you can sit on a scale and consent to die on it, and the scale will lose exactly 21 grams of weight. So all the little science lovers out there can all fuck off with their whole "the soul doesn't exist" shit. Yeah. So that's out of the picture. But I think what's happened is our souls are immortal, and the flesh body, we're not bodies that have a soul in it. It's like we're souls that have a body. And then, that's why, I had a near-death experience, but it was a near-death experience as an outer body experience, an OBE, some say. True. And then you figure out, can you do that intentionally? And I think what we're in this new age of Aquarius movement, or like we're just shifting into a new eon. It's not just yes, Pluto just moved into Aquarius. So a lot of the astrology community is talking about how that is now we're in the age of Aquarius. It lasts till 2044. It's like, yes, that's the thing. That seems to be the spark of the fire. But when you look at the precession of the equinoxes on the 26,000 year greater clock, which would be measured by the astrological, it's like the astrological clock, and that's in the Czech Republic in Prague. Also, you can find out more information about this in a film called The Mechanical Realm, written by Vika Drasiv, and see how the Antikythera mechanism was a perfect machine in order to measure these things. But the 12 sections of the sky, it's literally what everybody's been building their philosophical texts and how people have created a sense of identity whatsoever. Yeah. And obviously I'm willing to talk about the PSYOP that I think is 13. I understand it's really exciting to find new information, but there's no actual evidence. And we find that Ophiuchus, whatever, it's a symbol of a serpent, and then NASA's pushing it. And we find that little mini constellation is inside of the constellation Scorpio. So you can't have two things at once. Anyways, true. What I'm getting at is the precession of the equinox kind of goes over a course of about 26,000 years, and around every 2,000 years, we're moving from Pisces to Aquarius. In like Pisces being the two fish. Carl Jung was talking about how this is Christ and Antichrist, but what do fish swim in? And what he makes an argument for in his book Ion Researches the Phenomenology of the Self is that you have to integrate the opposites into something more interesting. You take the good and the evil and you integrate them into one. Mm-hmm. So, in any case, that's a little bit of what I have to say there. But yeah. I think we're moving into a 2,000 year golden age, and the golden age is really funny. I have a feeling talking about what the golden age might really mean could get this video censored too. We'll see.
Oh, true. I mean, hey, we'll go balls to the wall. I'll have the recording, and then if it gets if it has
you
problems,
just put it on. I do a backup where all my more controversial stuff goes to Substack and Odyssey. So
true.
like,
Okay.
and I post infrequently on YouTube, just because, you know, look what it takes to be a blue check mark shill who purchases your followers on there. How cheap.
I know.
Everything. I mean, I'm going to say my algorithm is tricked out real good. I got it real siphoned up good, but it's full of agate matter chess videos and, you know, like what I like, but really I really just search things word of mouth, and that's kind of how I cure the algorithm problem.
Yeah.
So
instead of
when
just
somebody makes a suggestion, you just write it down.
yes, and instead of just like taking everything you see as face value, you actually go and look for something that can teach you information instead of just entertainment or whatever it is. I absolutely agree with that. Oh, and what was it? I keep having these thoughts where I'm like, I want to talk about that. Going back to the start. Actually, no, it's okay. We can just keep it pushing. But yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Like, especially the Zodiac stuff. Actually, no, that's what it was. Sorry, my mind's all over the place right now. You were mentioning the realms and how it's flat, or how your buddy was talking about.
The physical one is just one of them.
True.
I understand that there's maybe heaven and hell are manifestations of things that can happen in the physical realm, and maybe that the physical realm is in the center. You know, and just think about it in the state of reality of what we're in. It's, you know, it's very possible that hell could just be where microbiology exists, because the demons are parasites thing is kind of a useful way to look at it. It's like, I can't think of a worse reality to exist in except inside of a microbiology. Like, they say that the universe might be inside of a grain of sand at times.
Yeah.
I tend to have some sort of alignment with the holographic qualities of this reality, but it's just that I get really surprised that people don't want to simply measure it and disprove the biggest thing we've ever been taught from first grade. Just because some first grade teacher put a sphere in front of us that's confirmation, and we just accepted it all along. And then we eventually get really, really smart with our math and our science to the point where we are building ideologies of things that are on top of things that have no initial foundation. Like, Isaac Newton invented calculus to factor in big G, little g, and all calculus. Why was calculus a snooze fest in school? It's because it's not based in anything that you'll ever use ever outside of becoming a math teacher one day to to recite the same shit.
Yep, absolutely.
Where are you going to use calculus to put a bridge together, or to achieve like $1 million project? Like right now, people are getting millions of dollars by sitting on their ass and playing and laundering money with their phones.
Yep. Exactly. Like,
that's just addition and subtraction.
Yeah.
That's algebra.
Right.
at best. And then how to construct, like how you can measure or disprove the globe curvature is using very simple trigonometry that I think that you and I can easily understand. I definitely understand it, but I mean, it's that we can measure. If a boat goes over the horizon, it's because of the curvature. So they taught us in school with Bill Nye, right? And then the problem is like, but what if we could take consumer optics being like the Nikon P900, eventually the Nikon P1000. I currently am borrowing one of those from my friend Lao Singh, who's a excellent researcher, very smart guy, real talented mage himself. He's so what we do is just take the Nikon P900 and you zoom into the horizon, and then suddenly you can pull the boat back into view. And just like what you'll see with the sunsets, when the sunsets you seem to be going over the horizon because the spinning Earth. Like when we zoom into it, and let's say it's dusk and there's a lot, and it's not like too bright, so you're not going to damage your lens, I guess. On a day like that, you got to pick your days, I guess. But you zoom in, and then you pull the sun back into view, and you find it's above the horizon again. did I put it back up over horizon? It's like, or is it moving beyond the vanishing point of sight? So where's the
True.
sphere? There's got to be a sphere of some kind because we're seeing a circle around us, right?
Yeah.
Except the distance between, except the amygdala of our brain is where we receive all this stuff. Okay, and where we process it all somewhere in the brain. I'm sure some neuroscientists will be hyper analytical about it, but I don't really care. Let's just say it's behind our eyeball. Okay,
Sure.
and then from that to the vanishing point of the horizon, there is a sphere, and it's our eyeball. And what happened is a perfectly reverse engineered masterpiece was crafted by Apollonian sun worshippers, and it was pushed in 1492. Christopher Columbus claimed that the world was a sphere, and obviously we heard about that in school, and we also heard about how he was totally not a mass murderer, and he was a great guy.
Yeah.
And he was not he was not like some sort of skull and bones psychopath.
Yeah.
And then we heard from Nikolai Copernicus. Copernicus postulated these various things about us being in a heliocentric model, and the thing Copernicus has to say is shocking in itself, because even Copernicus admitted that it doesn't matter what distance we make these things, so long as it's an astronomical number that's really out of the reach of basic units of measurement. And it's like, he even admitted this. I have that quote somewhere in the book I've been writing, but that's all going to be on my Substack, so it's fine.
So, well, and then when you said the thing with the camera, isn't there like, doesn't light bend? Can't you bend light?
That's what they're trying to say. So, like, let's use a basic example of something we could measure. We can go to the other side of Lake Michigan and pull the city of Chicago into view over a 56-mile lake. This has been done multiple times. Taboo Conspiracy is a great channel. It's just a guy and his wife running around having fun measuring these long distances. Like, oh my God, there's a lighthouse that's like 26 miles away. Let's zoom into it. Okay, well, that lighthouse wouldn't be measurable if we use earthscurvature.com and factor in 8 inches per mile squared. So I'll just give a visual on the camera here. It's like you would have the point where you're here on a sphere to here, and then you're on a ball, and there's a tangential drop off. So let's just say you're looking straight ahead and there's a drop off. The further away something is, the more exponential the drop off is. So then when you're looking at the distance between, let's pretend we're looking at a distance between both of my wrists, the ball on both of my wrists, then you have a sphere that's in the way. It's just like if I walk around the corner, right? If I walk around the corner in a hallway, there's no camera in the world that's going to bend the light around the corner and pull me back into view.
True.
It's never going to happen. Just like it's not going to do it over the horizon if we're on a ball. But the problem is, just like we're magicians or something, we can pull those things back into view because they're right there. So
True.
like a globe earth person is going to say, well, the R value of the refraction bends around the sphericity of the bulging water held together by gravity, and we can factor in the R value of the, you know what a flat earther says? That's a lighthouse that's 20 miles away, and it's right in front of us.
Yeah.
And we can zoom into it, and that's it. That's all we're saying. It's like
True.
just nice and Occam's razor there.
Yeah.
It's like, and
Yeah.
so if we could pull the city of Chicago back into view, these are numbers I have memorized because I've been writing about it a bit. But it's like you pull it over a 56-mile lake, so 8 inches per mile squared makes it like over 2,500 feet in curvature that would be masking over the site of what you're seeing to that destination.
True.
But then the Sears Tower comes somewhat below that. The highest building in Chicago comes below that. But then we can zoom in and we can see the whole fucking city.
Yeah.
That's because the lake is flat.
True. Well,
and they're trying to tell us that what we're seeing is a mirage. It's like that's not how our mirage works. Like, I mean, I'm fascinated with mirages, but we're just seeing it there.
Yeah.
On a clear day without a lot of humidity. Yeah.
And do you think it has anything to do with the sheer scale of, well, our realm, or what we perceive as Earth? Like maybe the people that are doing the calculations, could they have? Nah, see, now I'm just trying to.
The point is that they're fucking lying.
Yeah.
And they have to build that math around trigonometry, which is built around the equator of the world, which is both models, flat and, well, the equator can be measured on the ground, and both flat and the spherical models agree upon what the equator is. It's the distance between point A and point B, between the autumnal equinox and the spring equinox. So it's the exact medium between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And the reason people knew the equator was the equator before sophisticated technology, if we're to believe those stories or whatever, is that they could use sundials, sextants, and compasses to find that on a no, I'm sorry, it's the winter equinox and the summer equinox in which it goes to Cancer and Capricorn, but it's the spring and the autumnal equinox in which the equator gets the sun over it. So it gets the sun directly over it twice a year, whereas the extremes get it once a year. That's why it's hotter. That's why it's hotter on the equator, and it doesn't snow there really. I mean, who knows what they can do with the weather control? But it's that at high noon the sun would be directly over a sundial and point down to it with zero shadow in the exact on the day of an equinox. That's how you would know you were on an equator, and then you make a deduction for how the sun's path goes. They were using sacred geometry to do this. The ancients all knew how to do this, and what happened is 500 years ago, a bunch of Apollonian sun worshippers and secret societies decided to lie to the masses about it and hide this from people, so as a mean to put us in a game like something Riddler would put Batman through in those video games.
True.
And any case, the equator is 24,900 miles. And if we're on a sphere, if we're to entertain a thought and say we're on a sphere, then that sphere would be 24,900 miles in circumference. And we know from geometry that that's a fixed number. Okay. So then we know how wide the belt loop that's going around the Earth would be. Thus, we can deduce, if it's a sphere, the R value from its core, which they say it's magma, molten, whatever. They're lying about that too. So with that, we have a fixed number that is objective. And that's where we get the 8 inches per mile squared from.
Okay.
So that's where we get that number in which we calculate the sphericity of the Earth. And then the people who believe in the sphere, they go to earthscurvature.com and then they're like, look, something disappears over 3 miles. I'm done. I'm like, well, as soon as I put a height, well, why don't you take your telescopes that you claim to be looking through and you claim to be doing any math about the stars, which don't change shape from each other whatsoever. All these stars are fixed shapes, perfectly moving without parallax around, and they're moving around Polaris because they are a part of the ether, the firmament. They're not far away at all. They're not billions of light years away. It's insane.
True. And do you think do you think Polaris could be kind of our, like, where the axis is, or what do they call it, a quantum entangled star, like another star maybe, and that's kind of why we're connected with it? This is just kind of like reaching.
I will simply start. No, that's cool. You should do that. It's that the stars are not suns. So there's nothing better for the sun worshippers to do except to tell you that all planets move around their suns, because they have to keep up with the shit they made up.
True.
And so by insisting to you that the stars are suns, and when you zoom into a star, you have to ask yourself, wait, if that was billions of light years away, why can I zoom into it with a cheap $900 camera? Okay, well,
what does it look like?
And then like, it looks like it looks like something of etheric quality. It looks like something you would see when you're on the mushies. It looks like some say, or you could say it's like angels. I reference the Wheels of Ezekiel for this kind of thing. The Wheels of Ezekiel is written about in the better translations of the Bible. We do find, if anybody is curious about the Bible, I highly recommend a book called the Hexapla. It is the Bible, but it is all like 7 different translations. So each verse has its different translations, dating all the way back to the Matthew's Bible, which is heavily censored. in which after screening my film, I had someone be like, well, you know, what does it say in the Bible? And it's like, well, it doesn't say we're on a moving sphere. Like, you know, like, I know there's a lot of things in the Bible that should be questioned, but if there's an original, like from Hebrew or ancient Greek going to English, and there's a Matthew's Bible that came out 70 years before the King James Bible, 2 Samuel 11:11. Okay, so that's a very important verse. And then we go, and then of course she pulls out her Bible app, and you know, it was my adopted mother, by the way, and you know, wonderful woman, and was like pulling out like this, and then like couldn't find the book of Second Samuel in the Tyndale translation. And by the way, the man named Tyndale who translated that copy was burned at the stake for having done so.
Oh, nice.
And this particular verse in that translation translates directly. It's like Old English, but it literally says flat Earth.
Oh,
and then, of course, all the other translations talk about a canopy or a tent above. So, you know, I gave people the verse, and I'm telling you where to find whatever. But the hexapla, fortunately, is a way to efficiently look through those verses and find where the authoritarianism was inserted into the translations, and where in the older translations it might not have really said so. So you use your own discernment to see where governments were intervening with the Bible and using it to control people and claw down on them,
like the King James version, right?
Like, and there's I mean, don't get me wrong, the way the King James version reads for most of the Bible is my preferred way of reading. I think it reads well, but King James is obviously a psychopath and was trying to get people subjected under the existence of government, put under the thumb of such.
Right. And something that came into mind, I've seen a few videos recently talking or comparing where we live or where we exist at Earth as the center chakra. And then the higher you go would be heaven, and then the lower you go would be hell. And your spine is the tree of life, right? Or the Garden of Eden, and all that. I think that has a lot of validity in terms
there's a lot of useful metaphor there, and I tend to have some agreement there too. I will say, for sake of like, let me think. I guess to think about like the Bible per se, and the way we're looking at it here, is that we like heaven might be that we become something. Like to say, people are aspiring to figure out how to become more than human. That's the story, the hero's journey Joseph Campbell wrote about. And it's what, you know, like, okay, what's more interesting than a farm boy on Tatooine, Luke Skywalker, learning how to pull a lightsaber out of the snow? And what is the Force? Well, dude, they're lying to us about the Force too. Like, what am I trying to do with this flat Earth shit? Is like, I'm trying to say the Force is real, and I'm trying to say your little science cuck buddy who has a PhD and thinks he's better than you is getting paid to not only think he's better than you, but it's like, they're just like, what are you gonna do about it? It's like, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do about it. I'm gonna make a giant 4-hour film, and I'm gonna waken everyone up to the fact that you guys are a bunch of psychotic liars who are taking $70 million a day from the American public, and you're lying to people about the very ground that they walk on for sake of just grafting the public, and you're not doing any science. You're harming people. You're harming children psychologically, and a lot of those science freaks tend to be weird diddlers too. Like, look no further than the dinosaur museum. Let's go take a walk. Okay, well, I did go to take a walk at the dinosaur museum, and I happen to know a little bit about human anatomy and what human bones look like because I'm an artist, you know, and I like to draw things, right? Okay. Well, look at that Triceratops. What is that back there? Is that a human pelvis? And it's really, really giant. Oh, it's and then you find the reports of the Smithsonian covering up the existence of giants in the early 20th century. and that's a huge problem, because we've seen like buried buildings. Okay, so the nature of the philosophy group that we're engaging in is dealing with something that we can go touch. Okay, we can go touch these buildings. Ain't nobody in this group being like, well, actually, Tartaria is not. It's like Tartaria is a good substitution word for the old world.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean, oh yeah, all of it was the same government. It probably wasn't even a government.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not gonna claim to, oh, I have the facts straight there, but like, dude, that whole thing with the old world, it's like these cathedrals, we can walk up to them and touch them, and zero of your sales choppy, like tobacco spitting, gas station boner pill eating, porn watching, fucking bullshit construction companies are even trying to build one. Unless we can get a contract for a couple $1 billion, maybe we can get a PhD genius in here to figure out how to put up a cathedral. It's like they weren't putting up cathedral with hammers, chisels, serfs, and horse and wagon, good shit carted around on a wagon by a horse. Like, it's literally fucking psychotic. Like, how about the new Walking Dead series with Daryl Dixon? I love The Walking Dead, but like, the first island you see in season 2 is an island out in France, which is like a castle built on top of a mountain in the middle of the water. I'm like, well, okay, so how the fuck they build that? Oh, did they put that thing up to film it on? Oh, it's AI made it. It's like, shut up.
Yeah,
like, just stand down, people. Like, no, these things are built with magic.
Well, and even going back to the time of the medieval time with castles and shit, that would be where Freemasonry would have started, I would think, is the people building the castles. They had to learn architecture and engineering. That was the sacred knowledge. And then,
so they say.
Yeah. Well, and then
look at the word. Look at the etymological value of the word Freemasonry. Free
doing it with
masonry.
that
Okay,
money.
they're not building it. It means, okay, so the front of these buildings, a lot of them say founded 1894 or something.
Oh,
right?
not constructed.
You founded. What does that say? Okay, now get homonym about this. This is all word magic.
Yeah.
It means they found it.
True.
Founded.
Founded.
And they're saying they found it. They're not saying, hey, like they have. Okay, so I went to the cathedral in St. Paul, and I wanted to show you these things. I went in there, and of course, like, first of all, like the whole the epic meditations are probably the reason why I found mushroom spores growing out of the freaking cathedral. And I think Cat Dad's correct about these things having been constructed with the help of the mushies, and that like there's something, an etheric quality to being able to do something supernatural to get these cathedrals up in the first place. I do think that there's cymatic frequency involved, likely the element bismuth, number 83 on the periodic table, probably mercury. I don't know what I think about mercury poisoning, really. I understand there's a lot of fear around it, but I think that there's a massive effort. I don't recommend touching it. I don't know if it's what it is, but I just think there's a big effort to keep people away from messing with these things as a means to disconnect people from using it to perform supernatural things, such as constructing their own castle and not having to construct things with a shitty little sales choppy fucking construction crew that's going to cost you $300,000 from some real estate scam artist.
Yeah.
Because if we were all building our own places using magic, nobody would be paying to live.
Yeah.
It'd be like, no, I'll just erect a castle over there, and then if you destroy it, I can just
build another one.
Like, like, why are we? Why? And then, yeah. So, like, that's the reason they're doing this, is because they're feeding on loosh. Water Woman shared something about the loosh. She's accurate about that. They are feeding on our loosh, our suffering. So the reason they do this money thing, all money might be brand new. Not okay, I'm sure people were trading a medium of exchange around. There's coins in the Bible. I get it. But like money as it's printed today on paper, and like, how about you pull out a new $100 bill and you look at that blue stripe in the middle, and someone tell me magic isn't real. Someone tell me, oh no, it's just your eyes deceiving you. It's like, no, you're looking into the other world through that looking glass. It's like Alice in the Looking Glass type thing. And it's just like what we're looking at on this phone right here. Think about how we're able to chat here. Do you think this signal is going to be bouncing off of a Wi-Fi router to go to a fucking 5G tower, which is going to beam up to a moving satellite that's hunking around at 17,000 miles an hour in space? Or do you think that they're just using direct underwater cables to connect the whole world?
Yep.
And then when we have evidence of this, when I sent footage of an underwater sea cables being the reason the internet exists, and that there's no lag in our video from here to my friend from Greece who was on the other side of the world, who, you know, happens to be a little too attached to the materialist science stuff, but I wouldn't say she's not a materialist. She's a great person. I will still stick up for her, even though she absolutely hates me at this point for all this research I've been doing. I understand. I'm here to take your astrophysics away, absolutely, because these people are fucking lying to you, and they're a danger to your life. However, the thing is like, no, this is not bouncing off of a freaking satellite, because then if I go into the woods, I can't give you a call. So how does that work? It's like there has to be a connection. So it's not satellites. It's an underground connection of fiber optic cables that go under the ocean for many, many, many miles. And there's footage of boats doing this. Yeah. And of course, like, you know, yeah, it's not about seeing this and being like, oh, okay, I'll just take your word for it. It's like, no, dude, like, this matters because you have to like change your position eventually, because if you're being like psychologically tormented by academia, and I can prove it, that is called a philosophical difference. And the philosophical differences in people, that tension can be relieved if people kind of take it upon themselves to really assess the reality system that's in front of us. And that's kind of all I'm really trying to encourage people to do, is like, let's like actually have discussions about it. Like, please bring your proof of the globe. Anybody, please, please bring it. I've been looking, and it all looks really, really bad. But true. And that's the thing, that kind of topic is so taboo because it's such a shock to the system. It's making people seem confused, and I empathize for people in that case, because I don't fault people for remaining confused about this because of like how much brainwashing has been going on. But like the globe, again, hang on to it as long as you can. You got a few days, and when you hit play on my film, like, all I'm trying to do is like cut the shackles off of people in the psychic realm. Right. And if this thing is the cause of brain rot today, then maybe this could help with the whole spiritual awakening thing, I hope.
Absolutely. So. Well, and that's why I not only wanted to sit down and talk with you, but then sort of play devil's advocate in a sense and say like, oh, well, if you think this, what would other people say, you know, in conjunction? And I'm sure you've been through this a million times. So you don't.
and well, not everybody's willing to record the conversations. Around here in Minneapolis, I'm not kidding. So a lot of people want to shout questions at me while I'm trying to play chess, and I'm just sitting there being like, dude, bring a recorder and then put it on your channel. Well, I don't want to do that because there's no way I can change your mind. I'm like, yeah, it's because I have a strong position. It's not, I'm not like, dude, like, it matters what you live on. And if someone's lying to you and stealing money from not only us, how about not only us, but how about I don't have any children, but let's just say for the general, our children stealing from our parents, our grandparents, and our parents and grandparents' generations, they just fell for the whole thing. We shouldn't be even paying money to live, dude.
Oh,
like,
man.
This whole like this whole like paying mortgage and property taxes, like, well, what do we get? A war in Gaza? Like, this is okay. Oh, we get more lockdowns to keep everybody safe. Like, dude,
Whoa, like,
literally, there's no reason. And we find out that the United States itself, like, if you watch Sean Hibbler's film, his new film, Old World Order, I think you might quickly like it's a great like if somebody doesn't know about the implications of the old world and Tartaria and how technology's just kind of always been around.
mm,
They had free energy, that kind of thing. If you're just trying to get the skinny of it, and it's not necessarily pushing the tip of the spear and being like truth cult, warrior, here's my 5-hour video, which is whatever. I'm not, I don't claim to be a truther. I won't. I'll get into that soon if you want.
yeah.
But the Old World Order is a great film because it'll show like the foundation of America is built on the fact that the whole thing is just a corporation. And when we find how they pulled this thing off, then they're doing it to people by their own consent. And that means in the court of law regarding natural law, universal law, common law, even whatever those things are, that we actually have a way out. Like, I'll recommend for any of your listeners to check out a guy named Brandon Joe Williams regarding how to never pay taxes again. Brandon Joe Williams is a pretty cool guy. He has a website called onestupidfuck.com. And you would think, but I mean, this guy literally, he refuses to take money for what he has to throw down. He's very goofy and funny. So some of the more stoic types tend to be thrown off by that. I think this is truth or cult syndrome. It's like, guys, get the stick out of your ass. Quit trying to be right about everything. Just loosen up. Like, let this guy make a joke about a fucking squirrel or something. Like, it's fine. If it teaches people something, it works. It's just, he's trying to show what he found out from his position of knowing a lot about lawyer stuff. This is stuff that not everybody's going to find value in until they find value in it. And fortunately, we weren't brainwashed by school enough to the point where we have to unlearn that. So if you don't know about these big rabbit holes of things you learn in college, be aware that you're actually way ahead of the people who do.
True.
And that you can, like, these things being unlearned is not such a terrible thing after all, because what would happen if you just learn corporate law and then the corporations fall? What happens when you learn a lot about money and you become a multimillionaire and then suddenly the value of the dollar is close to zero?
Yeah.
Well, what a life you had.
Yeah.
Where did it go? It'd be like the Adam Sandler film Click. Where did your life go?
Yeah. Wow.
Have you seen that film?
I think, yeah.
I thought it was going to be a comedy. It wound up being like one of the darkest films I've ever seen. It's very dystopian.
Yeah.
And I know Adam Sandler is kind of like a advertising maniac, and I know there's some questionable things about him regarding the conspiracies, and maybe the interview he had on Ellen DeGeneres is a little bit creepy in my opinion.
I haven't seen that.
Hey, maybe he was a cool guy when he was doing Happy Gilmore. That's what I'm trying to think, because that movie fucking rules.
Yeah.
And it's actually a really bad movie, but I love it, because it's like the side cast in it. They're just so funny. And the Shooter McGavin character using his fingers and like making the epic douchebag. It's the perfect like golfing antagonist. Yeah. But in case, like, I expected this film Click when I watched it as a teenager. Like, I wasn't going into it thinking it's reminiscent of something like what you would see in the series Black Mirror.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
but it's presented like, oh, it's a new Adam Sandler movie, and of course someone who's on a budget was just trying to make a trailer in a day and probably didn't even watch the movie and put out a trailer for it as if it's some sort of comedy. So we go into it expecting a comedy, and then we come out of the theater being like, oh, like gut wrenched. And
I wonder if that was a purposeful marketing move, because I bet less people would have gone to see it if they did know, right?
That's right. And damn. I think the misleads in advertising your film is a really good thing. I mislead people when I advertise my film, Vanishing Point.
And one of my biggest piss-offs is watching a movie trailer 2 minutes long, and I can tell you exactly what happens in the movie.
When
Like,
a Stranger Calls?
oh, it's like all of them now. Like
Well, how old are you? I gotta know.
I'm 22.
You're 22. You must be in touch with your past life regressions because you got an old soul.
I hope so. Thank you.
So there was a thing when I was before I was your age. I was a teenager, and I remember that movie coming out. And it was and we had MTV on because I had an older sister and stuff, and Total Request Live was where we learned about the NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears, and eventually Tom Green comes in with the Bum Bum song and becomes number one for one day, and that was like the day he broke television from there. And of course, like I think you and I might know, MTV has a headquarters, and at the very bottom is a Masonic lodge.
No way.
So it's Masonic television, which is why after the commercial breaks, they would have moon landing, like goofy moon landing footage. But and now back to the music, rock music, Rockefeller, yeah.
Right.
And what's hardcore music? We're trying to destroy rock music.
True.
We're trying to be like, we can go faster than you. You guys suck. Anyways, so that's a tangent in itself. But I am saying that on MTV would come commercials for the new movies coming out, and one of them was "When a Stranger Calls," and it would play every commercial break. And I wasn't huge on TV. I was just waiting for 4:30 to wind up because Dragon Ball Z comes on at 5 and Gundam Wing comes on at 5:30. I'm just waiting for my sister to finish her MTV program at 4:30. It was like synchronistic. I was like, we had when I grew up, we first only had like 3 channels, and then we eventually got like 27 channels. Nice. And that's when MTV came out. But I was like cartoon. No, it was like 72 channels. Sorry. And then channel 60 was Cartoon Network. But at 5, Cartoon Network wasn't for kids. It was like for people like my age, and they would play the cool shit like Dragon Ball Z and stuff. So nice. I would catch wind of how the commercials worked, but these commercials wouldn't happen on, let's say, Toonami, which was the midday programming for teenagers, kind of, but on MTV, every commercial break would have that movie "When a Stranger Calls," and I got to tell you. You see the whole trailer and it's just like, it's just music, and it's just a girl running around the house being hysteric. And then you hear the call is coming from inside the house.
That
trailer. And then of course I was just like looking at my friends. I was like, you want to go see this movie just to see if the end of the movie's in the trailer? And then we go to the movie. We leave the movie. We're like, I was right. Yeah. The end of the movie's in the call's coming from inside the house, and then it's like 5-minute chase scene of some shit.
What?
Like, what were they thinking? Like, and what they were thinking is they don't give a shit about these fucking shitty scripts. They're just making trash money to make trash horror film that isn't very good to watch.
Yeah.
So
and see, that's the difference between the people who really don't give a shit and they just getting paid to do the job, and the people. Somebody could have thought about that and gone, the call is coming from, and then cut it off to build the suspense. And then you want to know where it's coming from, but no, they just, okay, well, there's a line, throw it in.
Well, I mean, everyone would fill in the slots there.
Oh,
like that, I think I think the problem is like a lot of films from that era were trying to cater to people as if they were dumb. And they were trying to do it like, hey, make sure this is easy to understand so that we could sell a few more tickets. So you see in the movie The Matrix, we love The Matrix. It's a sophisticated film, I think, and I like that it's built around the philosophy of Jean Baudrillard's simulacrum simulation, and it also has characters and like tips of the hats. They're not stealing; it's like borrowing, kind of like what me and my film editor friends do when we're making flat Earth films.
True,
it's like a tip of the hat kind of thing towards William Gibson's book Neuromancer, which was the first science fiction book to ever coin the term cyberspace. And before that, of course, and it's so odd that Neuromancer had a prequel to it in 1981. William Gibson grew up in the hardcore scene. He was just an observer. He would just go to all these like minor threat shows or some shit, and then he'd go home and write like insane science fiction. And his first short story was Johnny Mnemonic, and people have maybe heard of that, but Keanu Reeves played as Johnny Mnemonic in the movie adaptation of it. See, it's
Damn.
like, see how it's all like coming together.
Yeah.
And so the Matrix is like a slight rearrangement of Neuromancer. By a lot. I mean, Neuromancer, I'm not spoiling Neuromancer, but the Agent Smith protocol and the Matrix is one thing. But there is something about when the Matrix was presented to people is that they wanted to make a whole thing very easily to understand. Even if Agent Smith is a program, they had to like really tell that to people and show people how a virus works, which obviously it's only viruses only exist within software. That's what my 2022 film kind of proves. So, and evidences within software do not govern our reality outside of software. That's what I'm trying to say about the scientific method as well in my book. So evidences within software have become dictatorial towards our reality, which is why my music career went on a huge hiatus and I had to make a bunch of philosophy films. Probably the nature of why I have to have this conversation right now, to make the entire context of what I have to say to be very easy for people to understand. But for it to be easy to understand, you see this one line and you would almost see like a movie reviewer, like the Red Letter Media guys, almost making a joke about this. But Morpheus mentions AI or something. And he looks over, he goes, and Neo goes, AI, you mean artificial intelligence? And like, like, you know, but like people like me or you are like, we know. Like, we know, you know. Look at Neo's apartment and all these computers. Like, AI, you mean artificial intelligence? And it's like, so they have to throw things in there for the casual viewer who's like, what's going on in this movie? It's like, you need to. I prefer a film like Revolver where it retains mystery. I like where you have to rewatch the film to catch it. You know. My dad's favorite film was The Fifth Element and Die Hard and things like that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of problems within Hollywood. Obviously, I am not one of those people who thinks that every single actor in Hollywood is compromised. Like, yeah, I don't think that every film is coming out of Hollywood either. Obviously, you know, there's some things that could be argued as a white hat operation, like the James Bond films might be. I was very keen to this, but I was trying to find who was forcing their crews to get the V word injected into them in their arms, the big old poison thing, and who was not, and who was compelling masking. Those are rituals, satanic rituals, and the whole thing is inversion craft. I can unpack that if you like me to. But when you look at the behind the scenes of the new James Bond film that came out in 2021, I noticed, and I of course I went to look for it. I noticed that the whole camera crew, nobody was wearing a mask. Everybody was just like probably hella aware, and they're like, we're not wearing that shit. You know, and just like all all of what we would perceive the rednecks from small towns who are actually the fucking coolest people. They weren't wearing the mask, right? So it's like some people are not like capitulating to the cult's will. And I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but when I look at a guy like Daniel Craig or something, it's like the whole thing is theater. But the theater has consent to it, and it's a great piece of art. I'm pretty sure you could take my words a long way on this. I'm pretty sure a lot of filmmakers like that, the creative people who are making films that are worth watching, I'm pretty sure they just want to keep doing that. And they don't want to live in a totalitarian world order. So they would make a bunch of scripts in these Daniel Craig James Bond films trying to warn all of the fans of James Bond about this. And each one of those 5 films with Daniel Craig in it, they have huge giveaways, which are things that I would have struggled to reveal to people before those films came out. Things like the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, the Behold a Pale Horse book by William Cooper. And William Cooper is just so odd that, you know, he did tax evasion, of course, which is good on him.
Yeah.
But a bunch of feds showed up at his place and put 67 bullets into him with an assault rifle.
What
It's
the
like,
fuck?
what is that? Yeah. So my suggestion to people is definitely listen to that guy's interviews, listen to what he has to say about 9/11. Take a closer look at 9/11. Actually look at the footage of 9/11. There's a 20-minute film made by Hibbler Productions, which has already been censored several times, called 9/11, and it's spelled out NINEELEVAN, and it's 9/11 in the sense that this is a banned documentary. But as film editors and anybody who plays with magic enough and understands how to scry our reality, we can play back this footage. Our grandparents and our parents, and even me, when I was in 7th grade when 9/11 happened, we did not have rewind buttons at our availability when the schools wheeled out the TVs in August of 2001 so that they could traumatize everyone with this event.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why they put the televisions into those rooms at that time. 100% of the reason.
They didn't have them.
To do a mass They also pulled out the televisions to traumatize everyone with the Challenger explosion in 1987, so that everybody would make sure to see that. They pulled out the televisions in everyone's classroom in the 60s so that they could fake the moon landing, and everyone could be a part of that. Hey, we don't want to miss this amazing achievement. Man's going to step on the moon for the first time. These are trauma events, and when you can get the public eye what they're controlling in the astral realm. By the way, this is an astral issue. They're taking the eye, which a lot of celebrities do, the one hand symbolism or whatever.
Yeah.
But like you could say, the public eye, the collective eye, the collective unconscious, as Carl Jung called it, and they're just scattering it into many different directions, but they're making it focus upon the positions of their forms of sorcery in which they want people to specifically focus on.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah, a little bit of symbolism there. Like, oh, it's a party now.
It's a party now. Little balloons there. So it's that they want people to focus on the same things, right? And then what they do, what can be done with this, and I can reveal this to you. You can use this maybe gamble and stuff. I don't know. Like this, there's a concept called the isometric pendulum, which people in the occult know about this. Like anybody gifted in the metaphysics kind of know about this. They might have different words and sayings for it, but take a big trauma event and then point that at the center, and then you go back and find a related event, and you find the distance of that time away from the event, the big psychic event. Let's say there's 9/11, and then 4 years before, Bill Clinton does something weird. 4 years exact to the day after, the exact same distance of time after, there's a payoff for what was set up back here. Because there's a lot of eyes in the collective mind are forcing these things, and it's a way for people to simulate control of the fates. And this is, I mean, that's a deeper thing. And, you know, many more of these people who are science trusting losers. It's like, oh, you know, why don't you trust science and math? It's like, well, why don't you trust magic is real, asshole?
Yeah.
You know, like why are you calling this fucking woo woo and shit? This sucks. Like,
yeah.
We have to share this reality with you while you tell me to grind my shovel into the dirt and dig harder.
Yeah.
For a paycheck I could not give a fuck about.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the trick, is that they've got us in a hostage situation of paying money to live. And I think the revolution occurs. I mean, I think what Cat Dad's looking at with the Aquarius book is going to be very useful to alleviate the tension. I think what he found there is profound. And it would be an archetype of that guy's humor and quality. It would fall in his lap. Yeah. I mean, I can tell he really cares about finding out what's true, and he cares about bringing people together. His connection to source is something where I could see him being nice to anybody despite their theological backgrounds, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's what I feel like that's what everybody should do, is just be open to listening to other people, whether you agree or not. And then if you don't have to argue about stuff. You just say, okay, it's a different of opinion, a different point of view, and
I like
Yeah.
how aggressive he was about that Solitudes guy, though. That shit was so funny. Like, dude, I want to tell you, like, the vibe I get off Solitudes, Charlie Solace or whatever, dude, like, he's saying a whole lot of nothing, and
Mm.
he's making an argument that the ether doesn't exist, which we can feel it. The crows, go back to the crows of the thing I can tell everybody about. It's electricity in the atmosphere. And if you want to be Mr. Scientific PhD about it, Richard Feynman, the physicist, wrote a paper about it called Electricity in the Air, or maybe it was Electricity in the Atmosphere. But it's talking about ether without saying it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then summon a Walter Russell book here, and so on. Ken Wheeler, he's another metaphysics guy. He recommends very highly reading was it like something Sophia Naturalis by Boscovich.
Mm.
It's Theoria Philosophia Naturalis is the name of the book, and it was written in the 1700s, and it's about physics, and it just looks like everything in it seems to be a better physics book than anything coming out today. It's so crazy. Half of it's written in Latin, so I have a slower time trying to understand. But I can, you can figure out how to deduce it with your own subconscious mind, especially with the tools that we have available. So
True. And even that's something I heard recently too, is that do you think they have gone back and added time to our like textbooks and stuff, added 1,000 years?
possible. I enjoy. I'm sure. Maybe you've seen John Levi's work and that kind of thing, and then of course there's going to be a lot of damage control. So if John Levi did find something that points out that the letter J wasn't invented until a certain period in time, which that's a huge one, and the letter J didn't even appear in English language for quite some time, or any language, any Roman language, Romantic language, and then we have the thing where we're looking at I and J, and maybe we're looking at the dominion of the Christ. Like the argument that Christ may have existed deserves to be questioned, but it deserves to be looked at too, because there's some people who think that there was 1,000-year reign of the existence of Christ, and that's what caused all these angelic cathedrals. I know my lunch break tends to think that somebody's called upon the help of angels to help construct a lot of these old world buildings. I could see that happening. Yeah, maybe if you're using the mushies, maybe I think everybody was just eating mushies back then, dude. Like, I mean, look at what the Super Mario video game is trying to tell us, right? And then what else is Super Mario trying to tell you except you're jumping through mirrors and paintings?
True.
The universe is all inside of a grain of sand, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
and then how is it that when we get into these altered states, when we get into the etheric visions or the spectral visions, whatever people call it, you can look at a painting, which I would rigidly look at as objective truth with a clean mind, but then you see it almost like it's moving. You can see almost the process in which the thing was created, because you can see it beyond the scope of what we perceive as time, because time doesn't even exist. It's just a shape.
Yeah.
It's just a theoretical shape. So the past and the present, the future is all just it's all simultaneous.
Yeah.
Or simultaneous. Sorry, I said that wrong.
Yeah.
It's all in simultaneity with one another. It's all connected, and that's
True.
where the isometric pendulum. It's like these things are things that we would argue, like the quantum entanglement concept is built around something that's a hermetic principle, which every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I read about that in my book too. I haven't released that chapter outside of my paywall quite yet because I'm still editing it, but and it's just like, imagine if you affect something and it has a direct relation, like people have the atomic theories, that kind of thing, based on Bohr's atomic model. I think it's a materialistic understanding, because all of the atomic model is built upon the ideology laid out by Democritus 2,500 years ago. So if the atomic model is built on a theory, then Niels Bohr just guess it right again, and then they went and proved it after. They started as a theory, and then they went and split the atom. It's like, okay, like, have you seen an electron? It's like, well, they provided us with cartoons, just like they did with the virus, which I can't talk about on YouTube. So
Well, and I wanted to ask you about that. Like, so you don't believe that they have split the atom, or I guess you don't believe that we have the knowledge or the ability to create like nuclear fission, whatever?
no, I mean, I believe that like there are value systems in nuclear energy, and I do agree with some of what Water Woman was saying. I do. She was talking about how there's radioactive things. It's like, okay, yes, there are things with there. You can make a poison bomb. Let's start there.
Hmm.
That's just what it is, right? So if they're firing something with depleted uranium, that seems to have like an environmental issue of some sorts. If you make if you make a mustard gas explosive go off, it makes it impossible to breathe. Agent Orange causes problems. If you make a fluorescent light explode and you breathe that dust in, that's going to cause some breathing problems and create complications for the lungs, which whatever, that's a thing. But I understand there's a thing like that, and I understand there are really big explosions that can happen, but the explosions that are supposedly so big that can wipe out an entire city, like you would have to put down so many explosions that you'd have to wheel out like tons and tons of this stuff to make an explosion like that happen. It's not something that can be dropped out of the back of an airplane. An airplane wouldn't even be able to lift it.
Well, I guess Occam's razor, then, like you mentioned before, could it be possible that they have found the way to do this physically in whatever our realm, and it does, like, it has so much power because it's something that maybe isn't supposed to be done by humans, by people, like
Theoretically, I mean, I know they have a lot of very deadly devices, such as the direct energy weapons. I recommend a channel. I recommend flipping through a channel. His name is Jeff Snyder, and of course, his first channel was censored, so his new channel is called Jeff Snyder 2, Snyder. He does a lot of investigations into the plasma fires. Plasma fires being the direct energy weapons, which the United Nations is using to, and it's not climate change; it's arson.
yeah,
It like, yeah, there's fires happening, but what's the cause? And people are like, quit looking at what the cause is. It's like, don't tell me not to do Scooby Doo here.
yes,
Don't even try that shit with me, everybody.
yeah.
Like,
And
it's like,
I 100% agree, especially with Maui, and I think in Chile they had issues with the same thing. And you see the blue rubes haven't been touched, but everything else was burned down. It's pretty obvious then.
pretty
But
obvious, yeah.
in terms of like power generation, because I'm a fan of nuclear power in the sense of if it is real and we can create nuclear power, it seems to be a pretty clean besides the nuclear waste that would be created from it. Right.
I would love to unpack that because I do deal with this topic in my film as well.
Okay.
First thing you need to know is that there's a guy named Howard Kikita. There's a whole bingo hall with the Freemasons who claim to have been sworn to secrecy for 50 years on a Vice documentary, who are in a bingo hall just playing bingo, and they're atomic veterans. So that's more of that Helen Keller, Stephen Hawking's wheelchair stuff of playing your emotions. And the guy sits there and tells you this sad story about how he goes, oh, we had a daughter when I got back, and she grew to be 11, and she started to grow a hump on her back, and she began to grow hair all over her body. We had to shave her twice a day. And he says this, and it's in my film, okay, and it's really insane. And then you look at the nuclear explosion footage with the positive claims put out by our governments, both sides of the governments of the Cold War, and you find these pieces of paper hanging almost like it's a toy set. Now, those smoke plume clouds, if I took a tiny camera, I could take this cell phone and I could probably replicate those things like George Lucas did in his garage. Like, right? Like, look at the explosion of the Death Star there. Did that happen? Or is that in George Lucas's garage, right? And the thing is like, we need to start looking at this because you start finding the smoke trails are always hanging on the side, almost like a giveaway for what's going on, and they get pushed back. It's like that doesn't make any sense physically speaking, but I'm sure that the physicists could now at this point, because they already told everybody they're going to space, that they could insist some sort of scientism explanation about why toilet paper rolls and paper mache objects are on this thing, and why trees in a perfect toy little set are being perfectly lined up and exploded upon.
Yeah.
Did they conspire to do the nuclear test right when they planted those trees in perfect grid fashion? And when they were blowing up the school bus and blowing up the house, they were able to film it. How did the camera survive?
That one,
And
yes.
and they play all this fucking music over it. And the thing is Richard Feynman, who was part of the Manhattan Project, who helped put out Little Boy and what became Big Boy and Little Boy for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Those bombs did not wipe out those cities. It was done by firebombing. So for all the people going into these these little documentaries made about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it's like they're going there and they're crying a lot. Oh, it's devastating. Everything was wiped out in a flash. It's like, well, why in my film is there a guy named Howard Kikita who claims to have survived the thing as a kid? He literally says in my film, by the way, I mirrored this stuff. If I had stayed on that roof and my grandma didn't pull me down, we would have been burnt to a crisp. I'm sorry. You don't survive what they described as a nuke. And trust me, I used to play drums in a band called Geiger Counter. The nuke thing was like, yeah, fucking, let's put nuclear explosions on our t-shirts and shit, whatever, like I didn't really think anything of it, but the philosophy of a nuke could be dropped anytime by a TV celebrity star was definitely residual in my head, and it gave me nightmares. And that is also mentally crippling. I go to sleep just fine knowing that an asteroid will never hit us, and that nuclear weapons, no astrophysicist is ever going to perfectly calculate a nuclear weapon to point it at an asteroid that's going to wipe us out like the dinosaurs were wiped out 66 million years ago. 66, what a number. It's not 67 or 64. Oh, but we have radiometric carbon dating. It's like, you fucking assholes. Like, these little dino diddlers have to stop. And yeah, they will after you. Yeah, I'm sorry. You might want to hang on to you might want to watch Jurassic Park or something and enjoy your dinosaurs while they last, because I'm about to take those away from you too. But the dinosaur thing, it's like the word Dinosauria was invented by a Royal Society member named Sir Richard Owen, who was a museum-owning member of the Royal Society. And he invented the word Dinosauria in the year 1842. There were other people maybe right before that in the same cult, also in the Royal Society. I write about this in my book too. This stuff is like, the reason it's dangerous is because it's giving people a philosophy of nihilism. Nothing you do matters, and whatever you're building with your family, there's no point in you trying to acquire wealth and building a castle for your family to exist in for generations. They don't want people competing with their wealth. Yeah. People who tell us these stories, they tell us these stories to keep us enslaved, to keep us bound to a philosophy of nihilism. If we're bound to a philosophy of nihilism, it might be because everybody thinks that an asteroid could land on Lyndale Avenue any day, and we're all just stardust again. And then our consciousness goes into whatever, and that this realm doesn't matter. Well, then now a lot of people are treating this realm like it doesn't matter. Hence why there's fucking gas stations everywhere, and people eat like shit.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
I mean, so that's that there's a good reason for that. And then, of course, like I use a lot of metaphors from the video game series Metal Gear Solid, which is a great series. But the reason I use that is obviously it's a giant robot dinosaur that can shoot nuclear weapons out of its back. It's like the fucking coolest thing ever.
And it's kind of just incorporating all.
I'm trying to point out, like, well, this is a fiction video game, and this is what you guys believe. Like, you get it?
Yeah. Oh my
and
god.
So the nuclear physics thing, like, I mean, that's another huge thing, because again, it's like it's built around some shit that some ancient Greeks said. And he came up with the atomic theory that everything's just particles, right? And that, within a cell there's 99% empty space. It's like, okay, like maybe what you're looking at on the microscope, it might be a universe within a universe. I get it. I understand. But like, what happened 4.5 years ago when you fucking science assholes told me I can't play drums anymore and shit, and said, "You gonna stay home? Oh, well, if you do want to play a show, maybe you could live stream it on Facebook." Okay, those science people are all losing their jobs because of me. I promise you. Within our lifetime, they're gonna be poor, and I won't.
True.
I am. That's my objective. I was like, well, if you're gonna take my job away, I'm gonna take yours.
Yeah.
And virology is the first to go. Next is paleontology. But yeah, the point is that what they can do, and what the Nazis pulled off as well with the scares of tuberculosis and trying to say that we can measure using faulty X-rays the genetic markers of people we presuppose to be the Jewish people. There were the ideological presuppositions to blame innocent people who had nothing to do with what the Zionist agenda would be. But they would use the genetic markers because, I mean, Hitler and them, the controlled opposition, if you're to look at it from that lens, is that he was paid by a Rothschild. What does that say? You know, so the like it's the Nazis and the Zionists are the best friends, kind of like horseshoe theory here. But to use tuberculosis and Tourette 4 and typhoid as well, because you're Jewish, we know you probably are, you know, and as he states in the book Mein Kampf, that they're life unworthy of life. And who knows how many times it's been translated into English? I don't really know, man. But I'm just saying, like, to say it's life unworthy of life, it's like, well, you probably shouldn't procreate because you're life unworthy of life. And you should probably bring your medical papers with you everywhere you go so that the SS can prevent germs from spreading. And the germ theory was built on the germ theory by Louis Pasteur in 1861. Happens to be around the time of the supposed Civil War, which, oh my God, if you want to talk about that, I ate a bunch of mushies and tried to prove that happened one day, and man, I failed.
Damn.
Yeah, so Louis Pasteur is just a wizard. He was a rotten wizard. And guess what? He was a member of the Royal Society. How about that? Isn't that weird? and then Thomas Edison and his light bulb, 1861.
Yeah.
What was you won't believe what he guess what? He's a member of the Royal Society as well. Like it's like they're keeping people distracted and looking away from, like, okay, they're trying to keep the eye looking at race and looking at, oh my God, it's women are the problem or men are the problem. No, but look at me, I'm you know, like it's all this look at me shit when it's like, no. Let's philosophically talk about this. And I do think that the people who want to insert the ideological trash and just like derail any sort of revolutionary movements from like actually playing games of detective. Yeah, I mean, I do believe in a strong system of vetting because, like, look what happens with the Solace Feds guy and his lo-fi chill music manipulating susceptible viewers into maybe believing that ether doesn't exist. At least that's the attempt. It's damage control to obfuscate people in their journey towards finding something. The reason for that type of controlled opposition is the same reason Professor Dave Explains is on YouTube, to make sure to fact check anybody who types flat earth into YouTube.
Right.
And don't worry, that guy's videos are the worst, and he's a cuck. But anyways, and so is Dave McKeegan. And I mean, I would love to see these people shed their egos and then apologize to the world. But I don't really have faith on that, because I think they've been exposed to the right information. They've been confronted on this information. They've been shown footage of like astronauts tripping on wires and shit. And it's like, guys, we're like literally trying to help here. And you're not here for truth. You're here because you're paid to do this.
Well, and I guess a last question, and then maybe we can wrap up this episode and we can continue in another one.
Absolutely.
What do you think is this knowledge that they're hiding from us? Like, do you think that maybe Hermeticism?
They're hiding the fact they're hiding. I think they're hiding that there's something supernatural within us, and that they use these techniques even in the hospital to mask it away from babies and to prevent their connection towards their mothers. There's often subversion techniques that are done even through propaganda. My friend Stephanie enlightened me to an interview in which what's revealed is that the ultrasound that pregnant women are getting in order to take a picture of it is basically the equivalent of a screaming truck honking its horn in a tunnel to be heard by the baby, and that the Western medicine hospitals don't recognize that the babies experience pain at all, hence why there's like certain types of mutilation going on, and that they're always trying to v-word the babies with as many shots as possible in order to reach a quota, which gives them bonuses, which is all they get. That's all they actually give a fuck about.
Damn.
And so what they're doing is they're masking our connection to source.
Mm-hmm.
If this thing, even if it is the Christian God, or whatever it is, whatever magical entity there is, the fact that they're hiding the fact that we live in a spiritual realm,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes physical properties, and that we can use the five senses we have in order to contact truth. And another thing I'll leave you at with that about the five senses is that you can use your five senses to see with your eyes. They told us this in school. No, don't worry, your eyes deceive you. The sun and the moon are the same size. Like if you're to even perceive, that's why I brought this. Here's this candle, okay, and let's say the little dark body is going over the sun, and they just flip right at the same size.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a dark body, kind of like Rahu and Ketu as described by Vedic astrology. I'm not claiming to absolutely know, but I am saying little experiments like this can be like, okay, let's illustrate a solar eclipse here, and then we go out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say this is sun, this is the thing covering it, there's your solar eclipse. Okay, perfect coin over a perfect coin, basically. And they're the exact, so they're saying that the sun is exactly 400 times larger than the moon, and that it's exactly 400 times further away from the Earth than the moon is to us. They say that the moon is 238,000 miles away, and that the sun is 93 million miles away. It's a ridiculous number that they just made up. They made up all the astronomics. I mean, I can tell you based on another section of my book that the sidereal orbital velocity of every single planet, if you take them and factor them down by day and you raise them to the power, if you raise that number of the sidereal orbital velocity, which Mercury would be like 0.42 of an Earth year around the sun, would make a mercurial year, and then so on. The sidereal orbital velocity of what it takes to make 1 year, and you compare it to Earth. Earth would be 1, right? And then the astronomical unit distance away has a factor as well. And you find these factors, and then you raise that number to the power of 0.666. Okay, so you take the sidereal orbital velocity, right? Bring it down by day, and then you raise it to the power of 0.666666, and you get the exact astronomical unit distance away that these things are from the sun, as laid down by Johannes Kepler. How did he know to do this? They say that he did an experiment for a course of 40 years. And so if the sun and the moon, they appear to stay the same size, but our science teacher is like, oh, but your eyes deceive you. The sun is actually the most massive thing. It's Apollonian sun worship. Apollo is the son of Zeus. That's what this is. And these are real titans we're dealing with. They shouldn't be worshipped. They're arguably demonic. But Apollo is, that's why they call the moon missions Apollo. And then last thing I'll tell you is that something you can measure for yourself. You can take 2 thermometers from the hardware store, and next time it's a full moon out, which, we got a couple weeks ahead of us, you can prepare for this. You can take a couple, so there's 4 types of light. There's sunlight, moonlight, which I think are separate things, and I'll tell you why. And then there's daylight, and daylight is the only one that doesn't cast a shadow. And then there's the Luciferian light, which is the artificial light, or you could say like this is the Promethean light. This is the fire. Okay. And the thing is one thing you can know is that daylight doesn't cast a shadow. So if you reflect any light off of a surface, that surface isn't going to project a shadow and create a shadow. But the sunlight and the moonlight do. So the moonlight casts a perfect shadow, and just like the sunlight does. Well, I mean, I know Cat Dad has a pretty cool argument to say that the sunlight is a little bit distorted lately. I think that's a very interesting theory. I will be doing some looking into it. I have found old pictures that where I was doing umbra kinesis and stuff, that kind of thing, where it's like you shadow play. So it's that Well, let me try to get this out of the way.
Sorry.
The moon's light is a cold light, and what does that mean? It means that we're taught that the sun is reflecting light off of the moon, and the moon is a perfect little stone that they can play golf on, but it just so happens to have this perfect light that can make a perfect shadow, which nothing else can do. It's actually an electromagnetic negative, and then Terry R. Eicher really explains that, and I have to unpack that in a book. I can't just sit here and do it with my voice. But you can measure for yourself the difference between a shadow, like just look on this table here. You see the shadow and then you see the light, right? So let's say there's moonlight here and there's moon shade here. So when you put a thermometer into the shade, it's going to be warmer than the moonlight, proving that it's a septic cold light. And you can prove that to yourself, and that's vampiric qualities. And that, like, maybe some of the old stories that were told were myth and fiction. Maybe somebody's controlling the bookstores and throwing true stories into the fiction section on purpose to invert a reality.
True.
So it's something to think about. Is exactly that. But in any case, the moon gives off its own light, and it's not something, what they've done by materializing the thing and telling you that a bunch of guys in scuba gear could play golf on it is to materialize the phenomena of it, and to hide the fact that, and to answer your question, which is why I'm getting to this, they're hiding the fact that we can perform real magic with this kind of thing. That setting your moon water, setting your intention, using the new moon, manifestations, those kind of things. These are things that get laughed at by little fans of science, and they're a bunch of losers, and I don't give a shit about them. So that's why I'm here to say something.
True.
So, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I not only respect and appreciate you coming on to talk about it, but then just having that perspective and mindset. Because like we were saying, there are the people who want to control and manipulate, and then there are people who don't even give a fuck. It's like, how?
There's the people who don't give a fuck, but they just obey the people who want to control and manipulate.
Yeah.
And they just enslave themselves to this. And we're just like, dude, we're trying to cut the shackles off. Like, we're trying to be the adults in the room and end the system. Like, hey, that thing in Gaza, it's on its way here, assholes.
Yeah. Or
You're
even
like, look at Asheville. Yeah, FEMA is like building camps. Guess what? When people come out of Asheville, they're looking for a place to shower, and they're going to go to whoever's got help, and they're being pointed in that direction. Maybe they can help because they built a little help center. Oh no, but the FEMA workers are telling people after they lost their families and their entire homes and walked in mud for 2 weeks, and they're barely able to even breathe. They just have to find clean water somewhere. They're asking to take a shower. And then the FEMA people are telling them, "Oh, you're gonna have to you because of germ theory, because of COVID." They're saying you have to come in wearing flip flops. So then I know people in North Carolina, because I'm from there, who were driving carloads of flip flops out there to make sure people had flip flops so that they could obey this really weird rule.
Yeah.
And it's like, these people aren't there to help. They're there to do harm. They're there to put these people into internment facilities and eliminate them and capture their kids and do rituals to them. It's exactly what the hell is going on.
Yeah. Isn't that like the exact same rule as in prison? Or in prison that you have to have flip-flops to shower? And like,
it's a humiliation ritual. It's just another way to waste people's fucking time. Because what do they do? What are they doing to us in the cities, man? They're wasting our time with paperwork. They're making you go and submit to a higher power of some fucking fat lady sitting at a DMV who's like, well, you're going to have to wait in line and you're going to have to bring your ICP papers or whatever the fuck they're doing. It's all just a war of paperwork. And these people are like, what they've done is they've taken any sort of activation system in which people can organize their society. And the CIA does this intentionally. You can find that through many different means. I know I've gotten this information. I've seen it firsthand. The inversion system also works there, where they just put CIA handled losers in charge of grocery stores because they can control people's intake of food. Then there comes hypercubism, because if you can control people's foods, you can square the circle on their ideology and get them to submit to the order of this normalization, which is the mask. Okay.
true.
And then what else can you do? You can invade any sort of activist movement that might try to be like, we're going to do this and that. We're going to demand better pay. We're going to do whatever. And they put the most incompetent losers in charge to sit around and be like, eating candy bars and shit. And then they take the well acting, well mannered, competent, smart, high IQ person, and they say, well, we don't really have a lot to pay you, but here's a broom and you can stand over there and sweep dirt for a while.
Yeah.
And they do that in the cities with the economy too, with all this DEI horse shit. And they do that in my city.
Yeah.
They discriminate upon the ability to even hire anybody these days because there's not really a lot of money going around like there used to be, and there is a discrimination upon people's ability to access a free market.
Yeah.
So that's how they're doing it. It is an economic warfare.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So anyways, anyone who's curious and enjoyed this, my works can be found at proxyearth.substack.com. If you want to listen to my discography or watch me play drums, I have a link tree. It's Linktree, where it's linktr.ee//Ira_James.
Nice.
And it's that simple. You find I played on a bunch of records. You find I'm not some fed. I absolutely lost a lot of money doing this flat Earth shit, and I'm never gonna stop. Until they are stopped, then I'm gonna continue philosophically tearing their little control systems apart.
Absolutely, I love it.
Right on.
Keep
man.
doing you, and thank you for being on this episode.
Yeah, dude. Thank you for having me.
Here, I'm gonna end.